Hey, in this video we'll be looking at something called integers. We'll be looking at how to compare them, how to order them, we'll be looking at what they are, and we'll also be looking at something called absolute value. So what's an integer? An integer is a whole number, and we've probably heard the phrase whole number many times. So when you think of whole numbers, you think of numbers that you can count, right? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those are whole numbers. But integers also include negative whole numbers, so like -1, -2, -3, 4, 5, -5, -6, -7. And not only do they include positive whole numbers and negative whole numbers, there's something else. Exactly. It also includes the number 0. That is an integer as well. All right, so there is something called the number line, which will help us to visualize integers. And we can look at how to order these numbers on our number line so that we can see what's biggest, what's smallest, what's in between, so on and so forth. So on a number line, we usually try to put the 0 in the middle. Not necessarily, depending on what you're trying to show. But for this purpose, I'm going to put the 0 in the middle. And on the right side, we're going to have our positive integers. And we're going to count like we normally count, starting from 1, 2. And so as you notice here, as we go in the right direction, as we go to the right, the numbers increase. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now that's all I could fit on my number line, but the numbers actually do go infinitely to the right. They never end. So that's how you number the integers on the right side. As you go left, the numbers get smaller. So we start after 0, we have -1, which is smaller than 0, and -2, which is smaller than -1, and so on and so forth. And I can keep going with this infinitely as well, but on my line, and for the purposes of this video, I'll have to stop at -7. But just know that the numbers go infinitely to the left as well. So if you're ever asked to order integers, for example, if you're ever asked to compare two numbers, and someone says, which one is smaller, -7 or -9? Well, that negative sign tells you that you're going to be numbering it in that direction. So -9 would be over here, which therefore is smaller than -7. Now, obviously, the opposite would be true if I asked you to compare 7 and 9. Which one is bigger? Well, anyone watching this video will probably be able to tell me that 9 is the bigger one in this case because they're both positive. And if it's something you have a hard time visualizing, just think about where 9 would be on our number line. It would be somewhere over there, which tells you that it's therefore bigger than our 7. All right, so I do have one more thing to talk about when we're thinking about ordering numbers. The conversation is not complete until we've talked a little bit about absolute value, so stay tuned. Okay, so now we're ready to talk about the absolute value of a number. And the absolute value of a number is that number's distance from 0. So think about that for a second while I write it down. The absolute value of a number is that number's distance from 0. And we're talking about the number line when we say the number's distance from 0. So for example, let's get a number line here again. And so we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And on the negative side, we have -1, -2, -3, -4, and it seems I've run out of space, so that's okay. We'll put the arrows to indicate that they go on in both directions. And so let's say I wanted to know what the absolute value of -2 is. Well, if you take a look at -2, how far is -2 from 0? Well, 0 is right here, and it's 2 units from 0. So the absolute value of the absolute value of -2, written in this way, -2, these are absolute value signs. So the absolute value of -2 is the distance from 0, so it's 2. All right, let's do another one. What's the absolute value of 4? Well, the absolute value, written in that way with those two lines, of 4 is 4's distance from 0. So if you look at how far 4 is from 0, we have 1 unit, 2 units, 3 units, 4 units. So the absolute value of 4 is just 4. So if you notice here, the absolute value of -2 was 2. The absolute value of 4 was 4. Absolute value will always end up being a positive number. So it doesn't matter if I ask what's the absolute value of -132. Let's just do it. Even though we don't have a number line, let's do it anyway. So 132, the absolute value of -132. What do you think that is? We have no number line, and it would be so annoying to count. If you said 132, you are correct. It's just the positive value of whatever number, whether the number is positive or whether the number is negative. So the absolute value of -132 is 132. The absolute value of 23 is 23. Okay, hope that makes sense.